Sorry GBA fans, it's Zilx here, and welcome to week 2 of the weekly recap. I'm joined with...
Hey GBA fans, it's Choice CJ here. Thanks for joining me, Zilix.
And as per usual, we are going to be going over all the matches that happened last Sunday, and at the end we'll be going over the top kills and the playoff prediction, or what it's currently shaping up to be. So without any further ado, let's get into the first battle. First up, we are looking at Danicki in the Rosa Raiden versus Jolt and the Toronto Staraptors. The Rosa Raiden had a lineup of Garchomp, Darmanitan, Tangrowth, Licky, Mega Absol, and Magearna, while the Toronto Staraptors had Tornadus T, Seismitoad, Rotom Heat, Mew, Mega Kangaskhan, and Scolipede. First turn of the match, Danicki set up rocks with his Garchomp, while Jolt gets a Scald Burn versus the Garchomp with his Seismitoad. On the following turn, the Garchomp Toxics the Seismitoad, and in return, the Seismitoad sets up rock for his side of the field. This Toxic is pretty important as it does chip down Seismitoad for the majority of the battle, but we'll get to that in a little bit. The next turn, both of the players switch out. The Rosa Raiden sends out their Tangrowth, and the Staraptors send out their Mega Kangaskhan. The Mega Kangaskhan goes for an Ice Beam on the Tangrowth, getting the freeze on the first hit and a crit with the second hit. Luckily for the Tangrowth though, it is able to thaw out immediately. Both teams then switch out once again. Now it is Scolipede versus the Licky, and Scolipede sets up Toxic Spikes, which end up being very useful for the Staraptors for the remaining of the game. And the Licky goes for a return, revealing that it is misgened with the incorrect amount of happiness, so it's not doing the right amount of damage that it should be with those returns. So it is forced to start Dragon Tailing around, hoping to get maybe the Rotom Heat in or the Scolipede back in to get some chip rock damage. For the most part, it is getting the Seismitoad with these Dragon Tails, Seismitoad, Mega Kangaskhan, and the Seismitoad is racking up a bit more of that toxic damage as well as coming in on the rock, so it is getting fairly low at this point. Eventually, the Licky does pass a Wish into the Tangrowth, and Jolt takes advantage of the incoming Tangrowth and goes into his Tornadus, getting the first knockout of the battle with the Hurricane versus the Tornadus. This gives Dan a chance to get his Darmanitan into the battle, and Jolt chooses to sack off his now very low Seismitoad. And now, the Darmanitan, having taken rocks, a bit of poison damage, and recoil, it is very low on HP. He decides to stay in on the incoming Mew and go for another Flare Blitz. Unfortunately, he does not knock it out, and the Mew is able to roost up, and the Darmanitan goes down to the poison. This is followed by Dan trying to go into Absol to get the knockout on the Mew. However, the Mew is able to survive the knockoff with a Cobra Berry, and the Mew is able to weaken the Absol with a Flamethrower. Not wanting to take a hit on both sides, both teams do end up switching, and it eventually gets to the point where there's Garchomp versus Mew, and Garchomp is able to knock out the Mew with an Earthquake. This allows the Tornadus to come in once again for a revenge kill, going for the HP Ice on the Garchomp. A bit more pivoting around happens, getting chip damage on both sides, where eventually the Scolipede does knock out the Licky with an Earthquake. Scolipede is now pretty low due to Life Orb recoil and coming in on rocks, and Dan, deciding that he doesn't really have much of a chance, he's going to go for the win right here as he goes into his Magearna. He does take an Earthquake with the Magearna, does survive it, and the Scolipede goes down to the Life Orb recoil. This gives Magearna the Soul Heart boost as it goes for a Trick Room. He could potentially win here as Magearna will be the slowest mon on the field, so in Trick Room it will be the fastest, and with the Soul Heart boost he does have a chance of winning. However, the Rotom Heat, since it never did get brought in by the Dragon Tail, is nearly at full health as it comes in on rocks only one time, and he is safely able to take the Hidden Power Rock because it is an Assault Vest Rotom Heat, and he knocks out the Magearna with an Overheat as the Absol comes in to revenge kill the Rotom, and it dies to the poison, giving Jolt a 2-0 victory.
I think the unspoken hero in this game was definitely the Toxic Spikes from the Toronto Staraptors. It doesn't come up on any of the kill leaderboards here, but the T-Spikes were able to knock out 2 Pokemon and kill the Darmanitan and the Absol. So that was a really smart bring on Jolt's part. Dan could have potentially brought it back with the Magearna at the end. It's a very powerful Trick Room set, but Jolt just really had everything prepared for that, so hats off to him.
This game especially showed how dangerous hazards can be, especially Toxic Spikes, as I'm sure Jolt's team was taking a lot of chip damage from like the Dragon Tail and all that, but Dan was taking even more from the poison and rocks nearly every turn.
For sure. Hopping into the next battle, we do have Leo, coach of the Durham Dreadagons, going up against HLD Productions, aka Randy, coach of the Texas Rangers. Leo brought his Mega Aerodactyl, Raichu, Donphan, Salazzle, Reuniclus, and Tapu Fini. Meanwhile, Randy brought Mega Scizor, Tapu Koko, Hawlucha, Cloyster, Meloetta, and Alolan Muck. There's a really big play just right off the bat on turn 1, Mega Arrow versus Scizor. Leo makes a rather bold play and stays in with his arrow just to click rocks, and it does give him some really important information that the Scizor is not an Adamant Max attack set because it only does about 75% damage to that arrow. The arrow is going to switch out, and he's going to bring in Salazzle to take the BP, and Leo will then double on the next turn back into the arrow on the Muck switch in from Randy. Then there's a little bit more of this sort of switch game going on between Salazzle, Muck, and Arrow. Salazzle is able to get some nice damage off on the Muck. Muck's going to be able to knock off the incoming Donphan, which was offensive, and another huge play happens. Donphan flicks Fire Fang and hits an incoming Mega Scizor for the knockout, eliminating Randy's best check to Mega Arrow. Tapu Koko comes in looking to apply some pressure, but Leo's got a good switch into that with the Raichu. The Meloetta, which is a Choice Scarf set, but still pretty bulky, is able to switch in on the Raichu pretty easily and really throw Leo for a loop. This Meloetta is clicking Hyper Voice repeatedly, getting damage on Tapu Fini, getting a little bit of damage on Reuniclus, and eventually Leo ends up sacking the Salazzle so that he can bring his Fini back in now that it's at a higher amount of HP, and take it out with a Hydro Pump. Randy potentially sees a window for his Hawlucha. He brings it in, goes for Sky Attack. He's able to take out the Tapu Fini, get his Unburden boost, and then Leo sends in his Reuniclus. It is learned that the Reuniclus is Regenerator, so whereas Randy might have had a chance if it were a Magic Guard set, then the fact that the Reuniclus is at full HP means that it's not going to be able to take out the Reuniclus with a Acrobatics. So Reuniclus takes it out, Muck finishes off the Reuniclus, but that really clears the way for Mega Arrow. Arrow gets off an Earthquake on Muck, it gets off a Stone Edge on Cloyster, and it gets off an Earthquake on Koko to win the game, and that is a 3-0 victory for the Durham Dreadagons. Could have been really interesting if that Hawlucha could have landed a sweep, or potentially if the Stone Edge missed on that Cloyster, which was going for Shell Smash on that turn, but it was not meant to be, and yeah, it's going to be a 3-0 win, like I said.
And I think part of the issue for Randy as well was he was making some relatively predictable turns early on, and Leo was capitalizing on that. Just being able to take less damage than Randy was early on and lead the way for some earlier knockouts.
I agree. Leo really had the momentum from turn 1.
Next up, we have Papa C and Regulator, the New York Clinks versus the LA Clefable. New York Clinks had the roster of Rotom Heat, Serena, Manaphy, Skarmory, Mega Pidgeot, and Haxorus, while the LA Clefable had Rotom Mow, Alolan Marowak, Mega Gallade, Nihilego, Togekiss, and Celesteela. The first turn is Rotom Frost versus Rotom Cut, as both Mons go for a Volt Switch right away, getting out of there. And the following turn is Serena versus Marowak. Now, Papa Speed does believe that he can outspeed the Marowak with his Serena, as he is speed creeping. However, the Marowak ends up being jolly and does outspeed. Luckily for Papa C, though, the Marowak does go for rocks instead of knocking out the Serena with like a Fire Blitz or any other fire attack. Since Papa C did not get knocked out right away, he was able to go for a U-turn to get out of there, and he goes into his Manaphy, which would be his check to the Marowak. Regulator then is able to pivot around, forcing Papa C to switch back into Rotom of his own, which allows for Regulator to get momentum into his Mega Gallade, which he does take a burn from the Rotom Frost, but regardless is still able to knock it out with a close combat. Papa C then goes into his Skarmory because the Gallade is down on its defense, and maybe he thought that he could threaten it out with the flying attack and get up like rocks or some other statuses. However, the Galley does taunt the Skarmory, predicting that nicely, and goes into Marowak of his own, taking a Drill Peck from the Skarm, not doing too much damage, but obviously the Skarm does not want to take the incoming Fire Blitz, so he goes into his Manaphy, and it does take quite a lot of damage from the Fire Blitz, regardless of the resist, and he does attempt to set up a Z Rain Dance to dampen the power of the next fire attack, but the Marowak does switch moves and goes for a Shadow Bone, knocking out the Manaphy, which then the Marowak gets revenge killed by the Mega Pidgeot, and then I believe he goes into his Rotomo, as the Mega Pidgeot U-turns on the Rotomo going into the Serena, as Greg then Volt switches into the Nihilego, and that is pretty much the game. Speed increasing Beast Boost sweep on the remaining 4 Mons, and that was pretty much it. Nihilego just came in, he got the chip damage he needed early on, and that was game.
Yeah, that Nihilego sweep was really crazy. The fact that it was speed boost rather than special attack boost was obviously huge. The Rotomo was really nice for Greg because it invited in the Serena on the Volt Switch, and Greg just had so many things to punish the Serena that I think that's really what spelled doom for the Clinks this week. Really nice showing from the Clefable.
Yeah, Papa C did mention in his commentary he made quite a few misplays. However, he has made some changes to his team for the following week, so hopefully he'll be able to bounce back from a big loss like this.
Indeed. Our fourth match is between Don Fanatic, aka Jack, and Magic Activator. Jack, of course, is the coach of the Norridge Skitty, and he brought Mega Lopunny, Skuntank, Volcarona, Staraptor, Latios, and Registeel. Meanwhile, the Memphis Drizzlies had on their roster this week Jolteon, Kartana, Mega Venusaur, Landorus, Arcanine, and Gardevoir. The lead is Jolteon versus Lopunny. Jolteon wants to get the heck on out of there, it would like to get off its Flame Orb for the Quick Feet, but is not able to. He goes into Lando, which is a pretty safe play as the Lopunny goes for Power Up Punch. Then, predicting the Ice Punch, Magic switches into his Arcanine. The Double Intimidate really doing good work there. There's a bit of pivoting around between Latios coming in. It goes for a substitute on Gardevoir, but isn't able to get any momentum going. Registeel comes in, clicks Rocks. Landorus switches in from Magic, but Magic unfortunately realized that he grabbed the wrong Landorus set. The Landorus did not have Stealth Rocks like he had thought. Instead, it was a Rock Polish set. In the long run, the Rocks really would have been nice, but in the moment, Landorus is able to click a Rock Polish on the switch out from Registeel, and is able to net a kill with Supersonic Sky Strike on the incoming Lottie. The Landorus is switching out next turn versus the Lopunny, and Arcanine comes and gets off the Intimidate. There's a little bit more switching going on that's really between like the Skuntank, the Arcanine, and the Venusaur. The Skuntank set was really nice because it had taunts able to prevent Arcanine from healing up with Morning Sun, and then the Venusaur comes in, takes a big chunk from Dark Pulse, anticipating either a Grass move or some other move, or Synthesis potentially. Staraptor comes in from the Skitty, and it's able to get a kill on the incoming Arcanine. The U-turn does bring in Volcarona, and Volcarona is looking like a big threat, especially without rocks up on his side of the field. But the Jolteon comes in and reveals the HP Rock, which is very nice, is able to do almost 90% damage to the Volcarona. Luckily for Jack, he did Roost, and now the Jolteon is going to be able to threaten the entirety of Jack's team. It clicks T-Bolt, and it goes for HP Rock on the next turn as Skuntank switches in and gets sacked. Lopunny comes in, and it's bluffing the Fake Out and other priorities. It's going to scare Magic into the Mega Venusaur as Jack actually clicks Drain Punch. Gets a crit, which plays a role in the next few turns. Volcarona is able to pivot in on the Venusaur and take it out with a Life Orb Psychic. And then Kartana comes in and kills the Volcarona with Sacred Sword. The Registeel comes in, and Lando is going to pivot into the Registeel. Registeel did have HP Fire to potentially hit the Kartana, but Magic's going to sniff that out no problem. Landorus goes for Fly, anticipating a switch out from the Registeel, but the Registeel actually goes for Magnet Rise. That allows the Registeel to hit Lando with pivotal Iron Head damage. Then there's a double switch on each side. Venusaur comes in, and Jackdaw Fanatic goes into Staraptor, is able to kill with a Brave Bird. The next turn might have been one of the biggest turns of the game. Kartana comes in, and anticipating the Registeel switch in, goes for Sacred Sword. But Jack stays in because he knows that his Staraptor will only die to a max roll Sacred Sword. And after surviving on 5 HP, the Staraptor is able to kill it with that banded Brave Bird. In the final few turns of the game, you have Gardevoir versus Lopunny. The Lopunny is going to switch into Registeel as it gets Thunder Waved by the Gardevoir, able to 2-hit KO the Gardevoir with Iron Head, breaking through the potential paralysis each time. And then Lando comes in, revenges with EQ, but that leaves it prime for the revenge kill by the Lopunny. Very close 1-0 game for the Skitty. So, very close match. Lots of good switches on both sides. I liked some of the sets on both sides. That Skuntank was really cool. And I liked the Quick Feet Jolteon, but I wasn't able to pull it out for Magic Activator, and Donphanak was able to come out with a narrow victory.
Unfortunately, he did not have that correct lander set. Had he had the Stealth Rocks, he may have been able to secure the knockout on both the Volcarona and the Staraptor, but was not the case.
Yeah, absolutely. If those rocks had been up, then the Staraptor couldn't have gotten off that kill on the Kartana in the late game. It could have been totally different.
Next up, we have Aster in the Montreal Epsilon versus Aberforth in the Newcastle Umbreon. The Absols brought a lineup of Salamence, Cresselia, Decidueye, Infernape, Piloswine, and Thunderous Eye, while the Newcastle Umbreon have the Mega Beedrill, Jirachi, Mamoswine, Komao, Rotom, and Superior. This match did end up having quite a bit of hacks that definitely affected the outcome. Obviously, it's impossible to say what would have happened had there not been the hacks, but obviously, you know, nothing can be done about it. Don't give the coaches any hate. You guys know the drill. It is the game that we play. Regardless, the match was very interesting, and hopefully you guys enjoyed it. But let's get into the recap. Early on, there's just a bit of switching, so not really much happened, but then Abe is able to eventually knock off the Cresselia's leftovers with his Mamoswine and set up rocks, while the Cresselia just heals up with Moonlight, and then Abe goes into his Rotom and is able to get a burn off on the incoming Piloswine, and then uses Pain Split and Hex to knock out the Piloswine. However, the Piloswine is able to at least set up rocks and get a little bit of chip damage onto the Rotom. Aster then sends in his Decidueye, being able to take out the Rotom after taking a big hit from a Hex. This allows Abe to go into his Komao, revenging the Decidueye with the Clanging Scales, and then getting huge damage versus the Cresselia, but even with a critical hit, it is not enough to take out the Cress, allowing it to live the hit and knock out the Komao with a Moonblast. Abe then sends out his Superior and eventually is able to get up a Substitute. There was a bit of an issue for Abe where he was trying to get up the Substitute, but first there was a high roll and then there was a critical hit on the sub, so he just wasn't able to get it up, but he did eventually synthesis up and get that Substitute. Then he used the Leaf Storm to get to the +2 boost, knocking out the Cresselia, and this put Abe in a very good position. He's behind a sub, he's at +2. Anything coming in is guaranteed to take at least one Leaf Storm, which will put him at +4, and he'd probably be able to either potentially sweep or, depending on what sets are, just do some pretty big damage. However, the Infernape comes in, he does miss the first Leaf Storm, the Infernape breaks the sub, the second Leaf Storm hits and does quite a hefty amount of damage. However, because he missed the first Leaf Storm, the Infernape is able to survive and knock out the Superior on the next turn with a Fire Punch. Abe then goes into his Mega Beedrill, going for Poison Jab towards the incoming Salamence, revealing that it is a very defensive set, so Abe tries to go into Mamoswine of his own, being able to beat the Salamence. However, the Salamence goes for Flamethrower and does burn the Mamoswine, preventing the Mamo from being able to knock out the Salamence, which allows it to roost up while the Mamo is slowly withering away to the burn damage. The Mamo then switches out, leaving it for Father, as it will die to rocks on the next switch in. The Jirachi comes in to Ice Punch the Salamence, but it does have to take a Flamethrower because the Ice Punch is not enough to knock it out in one hit. On the following turn, the Infernape comes in, revealing that it is holding the Salic Berry, giving it the extra speed, which will allow for the Infernape to sweep the rest of Abe's team with that speed boost, giving Aster a 2-0 win over the Newcastle Umbreon.
Yeah, this was one of the closer games of the week. As you mentioned, there were some uncontrollable factors in this game that maybe shifted it one way or the other. I really like the game plan on both sides. It looks like Abe was just trying to break down through all of Aster's Fatmons, and Aster had some really cool setup sets that could have potentially, either one of them, either the Infernape or the Thundurus, could have potentially finished off the game. And yeah, these are two of the top teams, and it was cool to see them go hand to hand. So with that, let's take a look at the standings after 2 weeks in the GBA season. We have at the top, tied for first place, the Montreal Epsilon and the Toronto Staraptors, both at 2-0 with +6 differentials. This is going to be a pretty interesting race to follow as the season goes along. We'll see if they're able to still compete with one another. Then we have a long list of teams that are in 1-1. The two teams that are in playoff range from the 1-1 records are the Rosa Raiden and the LA Clefable. Of course, Donachie and the Rosa Raiden did lose this week, but Greg was able to pick up a W. Both of them are having nice differentials due to some big sweeps from different mons on their teams, Magearna for the Rosa Raiden and Nihilego for the Clefable. Below that, we do have the Umbreon, the Rangers, the Druddigons, and the Skitty, all tied at 1-1. And then rounding out the bottom two, we do have the Memphis Drizzlies, 0-2 with a -6 differential, and the Clinks, -9 differential, 0-2 record. So, still a long season to go. There are 7 games left, so anything could happen. But we do see that there are a few teams that are floating to the top. So let's see if they can maintain their grip throughout the season. Moving to the league leaders, we do have a new kill leader this week, being the Infernape. Infernape did get 3 knockouts this week, bringing it to a 5 kills, 0 deaths record throughout the season. Number 2 is Magearna. I'm sure you guys do remember the 5-0 sweep that Magearna got last week, but it was not able to pick up any kills versus the Toronto Staraptors this week. Then number 3, we do have the Nihilego, which is fresh off the 4-0 sweep of the New York Clinks that we mentioned. Rounding up the top 10, we do have Scolipede, Mega Aerodactyl, Mega Gallade, Tapu Koko, Staraptor, Tornadus, T, and finally Emboar. So a lot of powerful offensive mons, a lot of speed on there. The only mon I guess there's 2 mons in this group that aren't above base 100, being the Magearna and the Emboar. So that's just kind of a curious thing to note. And, you know, we'll see if the coaches can continue to apply tremendous pressure with these mons all season long. So with that, we will be wrapping up our Week 2 recap. Thank you guys, of course, for watching. If you did enjoy, please make sure to leave a like and drop a sub to the GBA channel. That'll also allow you to stay up to date with all of the other analyst content that we are doing this season, including GBA Fantasy, Power Rankings, and more. And please make sure you do check out our coaches, so that way you won't be missing out on any of the latest GBA action. Zilix, do you have anything to say to wrap us up?
Nope, you just about covered all of it. I will see you guys next week. Okay, thanks, bye.
Yeah, see you guys next week. Take it easy. Bye-bye.